Welcome to the very first storytelling for animals and people. It's taken a while for as many stories that I've told and as many as I've written down for me to realize that the animals want to hear the stories too. Part of my awareness came from the many times that students have told me that the animals gather to watch my videos, listen to the classes, and generally show up to be part of the energy. One student shared that she had carefully closed the door to the room so that she could listen to our first call for Reiki class. And no sooner did the call start than her animal companions began trying to tear the door down to get in. And they insisted on being part of every call going forward, even though it was stories interspersed with teaching. I think my biggest jump in awareness came from a parrot named Max, who lives at Cougar Mountain Zoo. And he enjoyed my telling him stories and told me so out loud in English. So recently I focused my attention on the animals. I reached out to listen and to see what they wanted. And the animals said, gather the people and the animals so that we may sit together in the energy that unites us and hear the tales of animals as teachers and guides. Call upon the ancient ties that unite us, that we may remember together, gain inspiration together, and move forward as one. So that is how this storytelling series came into being. Sacred Space is open in the Peruvian shamanic tradition, and Reiki is also supporting us for this time together. So, here we go. There are many stories told of how the people first welcomed animal companions into their homes. Rudyard Kipling's The Cat Who Walked by Himself is one version, and has been a favorite of mine ever since I read it as a child. When I knew that I would be hosting this storytelling series, I knew that I had to read it aloud because its energy reflects the many threads that connect us to the animals. And just a note, it's the only piece that I will read during this series that isn't mine. It's an old favorite and no longer copyrighted. So in preparation, I went to find my copy of The Cat Who Walked by Himself, which is part of Rudyard Kipling's book, Just So Stories. And I was certain that it was contained in a set of stories and fairy tales from around the world. The 8-volume collection is beautiful, with raised engravings on the cover and color and black and white illustrations for each story, and was published back in the 1920s. I would get lost in it for hours when I was a kid, and so much did I love it that it was the only thing that I always said that I wanted when my father was no longer of this world. It had been his as a child, but I don't recall him ever saying that he'd read it. It is very possible that I am the only member of my living family to have actually read them. One of the books in the series is called Into the Wild Wood, and it was there that I thought I would find the story I sought, but didn't. I will share an image of the cover, Into the Wild Woods, as the art is another piece of energy that is woven into the fabric and energy of these stories. I finally managed to lay my hands on my copy of Rudyard Kipling's Just So Stories, and I now present The Cat Who Walked by Himself. Hear and attend and listen, for this befell and behappened and became and was, O my best beloved, when the tame animals were wild. The dog was wild, and the horse was wild, and the cow was wild, and the sheep was wild, and the pig was wild as wild could be. And they walked in the wet, wild woods by their wild lones. But the wildest of all the wild animals was the cat. He walked by himself, and all places were alike to him. Of course, the man was wild, too. He was dreadfully wild. He didn't even begin to be tame until he met the woman, and she told him that she did not like living in his wild ways. She picked out a nice dry cave instead of a heap of wet leaves to lie down in, and she lit a nice fire of wood at the back of the cave, and she hung a dried wild horse skin, tail down, across the opening of the cave, and she said, "Wipe your feet, dear, when you come in, and now we'll keep house." That night, best beloved, they ate wild sheep roasted on the hot stones and flavored with wild garlic and wild pepper, and wild duck stuffed with wild rice and wild fenugreek and wild coriander, and marrow bones of wild oxen, and wild cherries, and wild grenadillas. Then the man went to sleep in front of the fire, ever so happy. But the woman sat up, combing her hair. She took the bone of the shoulder of mutton, the big fat blade bone, and she looked at the wonderful marks on it, and she threw more wood on the fire, and she made a magic. She made the first singing magic in the world. Out in the wet wild woods, all the wild animals gathered together where they could see the light of the fire a long way off, and they wondered what it meant. Then Wild Horse stamped with his wild foot and said, "Oh, my friends and oh, my enemies, why have the man and the woman made that great light in that great cave, and what harm will it do us?" Wild Dog lifted up his wild nose and smelled the smell of roast mutton and said, "I will go up and see and look and say, for I think it is good. Cat, come with me." "Nay, nay," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." "Then we can never be friends again," said Wild Dog, and he trotted off to the cave. But when he had gone a little way, the cat said to himself, "All places are alike to me. Why should I not go too and see and look and come away at my own liking?" So he slipped after Wild Dog softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When Wild Dog reached the mouth of the cave, he lifted up the dried horse skin with his nose and sniffed the beautiful smell of the roast mutton. And the woman looking at the blade bone heard him and laughed and said, "Here comes the first. Wild thing out of the wild woods, what do you want?" Wild Dog said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, what is this that smells so good in the wild woods?" Then the woman picked up a roasted mutton bone and threw it to Wild Dog and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, taste and try." Wild Dog gnawed the bone, and it was more delicious than anything he had ever tasted, and he said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, give me another." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, help my man to hunt through the day and guard this cave at night, and I will give you as many roast bones as you need." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a very wise woman, but she is not so wise as I am." Wild Dog crawled into the cave and laid his head on the woman's lap and said, "Oh, my friend and wife of my friend, I will help your man to hunt through the day, and at night I will guard your cave." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish dog." And he went back through the wet, wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. When the man waked up, he said, "What is Wild Dog doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Dog anymore, but the first friend, because he will be our friend for always and always and always. Take him with you when you go hunting." Next night, the woman cut great green armfuls of fresh grass from the water meadows and dried it before the fire so that it smelt like new-mown hay. And she sat at the mouth of the cave and plaited a halter out of horsehide, and she looked at the shoulder of mutton bone, at the big, broad blade bone, and she made a magic. She made the second singing magic in the world. Out in the wild woods, all the wild animals wondered what had happened to Wild Dog. And at last Wild Horse stamped with his foot and said, "I will go and see and say why Wild Dog has not returned. Cat, come with me." "Nay, nay," said the cat, "I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. I will not come." But all the same he followed Wild Horse softly, very softly, and hid himself where he could hear everything. When the woman heard Wild Horse tripping and stumbling on his long mane, she laughed and said, "Here comes the second. Wild thing out of the wild woods, what do you want?" Wild Horse said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where is Wild Dog?" The woman laughed and picked up the blade bone and looked at it and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, you did not come here for Wild Dog, but for the sake of this good grass." And Wild Horse, tripping and stumbling on his long mane, said, "That is true. Give it me to eat." The woman said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, bend your wild head and wear what I give you, and you shall eat the wonderful grass 3 times a day." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "this is a clever woman, but she is not so clever as I am." Wild Horse bent his wild head, and the woman slipped the plaited hide halter over it, and Wild Horse breathed on the woman's feet and said, "Oh, my mistress and wife of my master, I will be your servant for the sake of the wonderful grass." "Ah," said the cat, listening, "that is a very foolish horse." And he went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. But he never told anybody. When the man and the dog came back from hunting, the man said, "What is Wild Horse doing here?" And the woman said, "His name is not Wild Horse anymore, but the first servant, because he will carry us from place to place for always and always and always. Ride on his back when you go hunting." Next day, holding her wild head high that her wild horns should not catch in the wild trees, Wild Cow came up to the cave, and the cat followed and hid himself just the same as before. And everything happened just the same as before. And the cat said the same things as before. And when Wild Cow had promised to give her milk to the woman every day in exchange for the wonderful grass, the cat went back through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone, just the same as before. But he never told anybody. And when the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting and asked the same questions, same as before, the woman said, "Her name is not Wild Cow anymore, but the giver of good food. She will give us the warm white milk for always and always and always, and I will take care of her while you and the first friend and the first servant go hunting." Next day the cat waited to see if any other wild thing would go up to the cave, but no one moved in the wet wild woods. So the cat walked there by himself. And he saw the woman milking the cow, and he saw the light of the fire in the cave, and he smelt the smell of the warm white milk. The cat said, "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy, where did Wild Cow go?" The woman laughed and said, "Wild thing out of the wild woods, go back to the woods again, for I have braided up my hair, and I have put away the magic blade bone, and we have no more need of either friends or servants in our cave." The cat said, "I am not a friend, and I am not a servant. I am the cat who walks by himself, and I wish to come into your cave." The woman said, "Then why did you not come with first friend on the first night?" The cat grew very angry and said, "Has Wild Dog told tales of me?" Then the woman laughed and said, "You are the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to you. You are neither a friend nor a servant. You have said it yourself. Go away and walk by yourself in all places alike." Then Cat pretended to be sorry and said, "Must I never come into the cave? Must I never sit by the warm fire? Must I never drink the warm white milk? You are very wise and very beautiful. You should not be cruel even to a cat." The woman said, "I knew I was wise, but I did not know I was beautiful. So I will make a bargain with you. If ever I say one word in your praise, you may come into the cave." "And if you say 2 words in my praise," said the cat. "I never shall," said the woman, "but if I say 2 words in your praise, you may sit by the fire in the cave." "And if you say 3 words," said the cat. I never shall, said the woman, but if I say 3 words in your praise, you may drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always. Then the cat arched his back and said, Now, let the curtain at the mouth of the cave and the fire at the back of the cave and the milk pots that stand beside the fire remember what my enemy and the wife of my enemy has said. And he went away through the wet wild woods, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lone. That night, when the man and the horse and the dog came home from hunting, the woman did not tell them of the bargain that she had made with the cat because she was afraid they might not like it. Cat went far and far away and hid himself in the wet wild woods by his wild lone for a long time till the woman forgot about him. Only the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung inside the cave, knew where Cat hid. And every evening Bat would fly to Cat with news of what was happening. One evening Bat said, There is a baby in the cave. He is new and pink and fat and small, and the woman is very fond of him. Ah, said the cat, listening, but what is the baby fond of? He is fond of things that are soft and tickle, said the bat. He is fond of warm things to hold in his arms when he goes to sleep. He is fond of being played with. He is fond of all those things. Ah, said the cat, listening, then my time has come. Next night, Cat walked through the wet wild woods and hid very near the cave till morning time, and man and dog and horse went hunting. The woman was busy cooking that morning, and the baby cried and interrupted. So she carried him outside the cave and gave him a handful of pebbles to play with. But still the baby cried. Then the cat put out his patty paw and patted the baby on the cheek, and it cooed. And the cat rubbed against its fat knees and tickled it under its fat chin with his tail. And the baby laughed, and the woman heard him and smiled. Then the bat, the little upside-down bat that hung in the mouth of the cave, said, Oh, my hostess and wife of my host and mother of my host's son, a wild thing from the wild woods is most beautifully playing with your baby. A blessing on that wild thing, whoever he may be, said the woman, straightening her back. For I was a busy woman this morning, and he has done me a service. The very minute and second, best beloved, the dried horse-skin curtain that was stretched tail down at the mouth of the cave fell down, whoosh, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when the woman went to pick it up, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfy inside the cave. Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy and mother of my enemy, said the cat, it is I, for you have spoken a word in my praise. And now I can sit within the cave for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me. The woman was very angry and shut her lips tight and took up her spinning wheel and began to spin. But the baby cried because the cat had gone away, and the woman could not hush it, for it struggled and kicked and grew black in the face. Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy and mother of my enemy, said the cat, take a strand of the wire that you are spinning and tie it to your spinning whorl and drag it along the floor, and I will show you a magic that shall make your baby laugh as loudly as he is now crying. I will do so, said the woman, because I am at my wit's end, but I will not thank you for it. She tied the thread to the little clay spindle whorl and drew it across the floor. And the cat ran after it and patted it with his paws and rolled head over heels and tossed it backward over his shoulder and chased it between his hind legs and pretended to lose it and pounced down upon it again till the baby laughed as loudly as it had been crying and scrambled after the cat and frolicked all over the cave till it grew tired and settled down to sleep with the cat in its arms. Now, said the cat, I will sing the baby a song that shall keep him asleep for an hour. And he began to purr, loud and low, low and loud, till the baby fell fast asleep. The woman smiled as she looked down upon the two of them and said, That was wonderfully done, no question, but you are very clever, O cat. That very minute and second, best beloved, the smoke of the fire at the back of the cave came down in clouds from the roof, puff, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. And when it had cleared away, lo and behold, the cat was sitting quite comfy close to the fire. "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, for you have spoken a second word in my praise. And now I can sit by the warm fire at the back of the cave for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman was very, very angry, and let down her hair, and put more wood on the fire, and brought out the broad blade bone of the shoulder of mutton, and began to make a magic that should prevent her from saying a third word in praise of the cat. It was not a singing magic, best beloved, it was a still magic. And by the cave grew so still that a little wee mouse crept out of a corner and ran across the floor. "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "is that little mouse part of your magic?" "Oh, gee, no indeed," said the woman, and she dropped the blade bone and jumped upon the footstool in front of the fire and braided up her hair very quick for fear that the mouse should run up it. "Ah," said the cat, watching, "then the mouse will do me no harm if I eat it?" "No," said the woman, braiding up her hair. "Eat it quickly, and I will ever be grateful to you." Cat made one jump and caught the little mouse, and the woman said, "100 thanks. Even the first friend is not quick enough to catch little mice as you have done. You must be very wise." That very moment and second, O best beloved, the milk pot that stood by the fire cracked in 2 pieces, because it remembered the bargain she had made with the cat. When the woman jumped down from the footstool, lo and behold, the cat was lapping up the warm white milk that lay in one of the broken pieces. "Oh, my enemy and wife of my enemy and mother of my enemy," said the cat, "it is I, for you have spoken 3 words in my praise. And now I can drink the warm white milk 3 times a day for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." Then the woman laughed and set the cat a bowl of the warm white milk and said, "O cat, you are as clever as a man, but remember that your bargain was not made with the man or the dog, and I do not know what they will do when they come home." "What is that to me?" said the cat. "If I have my place in the cave by the fire and my warm white milk 3 times a day, I do not care what the man or the dog can do." That evening when the man and the dog came into the cave, the woman told them all the story of the bargain, while the cat sat by the fire and smiled. Then the man said, "Yes, but he has not made a bargain with me or with all proper men after me." Then he took off his 2 leather boots, and he took up his little stone axe. That makes 3. And he fetched a piece of wood and a hatchet. That is 5 altogether. And he set them out in a row, and he said, "Now we will make our bargain. If you do not catch mice when you're in the cave for always and always and always, I will throw these 5 things at you whenever I see you, and so shall all proper men do after me." "Ah," said the woman, listening, "this is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as my man." The cat counted the 5 things, and they looked very knobby. And he said, "I will catch mice when I am in the cave for always and always and always, but still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." "Not when I'm near," said the man. "If you had not said that last, I would have put all these things away for always and always and always. But I am now going to throw my 2 boots, my little stone axe, that makes 3, at you whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper men do after me." Then the dog said, "Wait a minute. He has not made a bargain with me or with all proper dogs after me." And he showed his teeth and said, "If you're not kind to the baby while I am in the cave for always and always and always, I will hunt you till I catch you. And when I catch you, I will bite you. And so shall all proper dogs do after me." "Ah," said the woman, listening, "this is a very clever cat, but he is not so clever as the dog." The cat counted the dog's teeth, and they looked very pointed. And he said, "I will be kind to the baby while I am in the cave, as long as he does not pull my tail too hard for always and always and always. But still I am the cat who walks by himself, and all places are alike to me." "Not when I am near," said the dog. "If you had not said that last, I would have shut my mouth for always and always and always. But now I am going to hunt you up a tree whenever I meet you, and so shall all proper dogs do after me." Then the man threw his 2 boots and his little stone axe, that makes 3, at the cat, and the cat ran out of the cave, and the dog chased him up a tree. And from that day to this, best beloved, 3 proper men out of 5 will always throw things at a cat whenever they meet him, and all proper dogs will chase him up a tree. But the cat keeps his side of the bargain too. He will kill mice, and he will be kind to babies when he is in the house, just as long as they do not pull his tail too hard. But when he has done that, and between times, and when the moon gets up and night comes, he is the cat that walks by himself, and all places are alike to him. Then he goes out to the wet wild woods, or up the wet wild trees, or on the wet wild roofs, waving his wild tail and walking by his wild lung. I hope that you enjoyed that rendition, and I have 2 more stories for you, both of which are original and bear relationship to what I just read. This story is entitled Out of the Darkness. Early on in my days as a student of shamanism, I went for a 10-day training at a beautiful wooded retreat located in Southern California. Sounds lovely, doesn't it? Afterward, I promised myself I would never do that again. Imagine 10 days spent in the company of 50 or so folks with major energetic and emotional baggage that they wish to get rid of, where everyday drama and chaos reign in class, story for another time, and hoocha is flying everywhere. Then imagine having sacred space open 24/7 with no hope of escape. Next, imagine that you have no place to go for privacy, since you have 2 roommates with no boundaries and 1 entity. An entity that the roommate said no to letting go of during class. No in the evening as you were trying to go to sleep, which of course was when the entity really began to gear up and frighten her. And no until 3 a.m. when I finally said enough and dragged both roommates out of bed to have the entity removed since it was not letting any of us sleep. My revenge? I made my roommates sing "We're Off to See the Wizard" while marching them through the darkened meadow on our way to wake up the teaching assistants, who, needless to say, were not too happy to be dragged out of bed either. 10 days in sacred space is a lot for anyone. It is sure to drag out all your major dirty laundry that you stuffed in the closet long ago, and I was no exception. I was not used to spending so much time with so many people and their issues, and I don't think I realized just how much my emotional balance depended on being able to connect with and touch animals. And now I was marooned in the woods with wildly erratic energy and very unstable people who were throwing their emotional Samsonite everywhere, and there was not a dog or a cat in sight. There was beautiful scenery aplenty. I would steal away from the group at lunch and go and sit on a little dock that extended out into this gorgeous sunlit lake where fish lived, waterfowl waded, and dragonflies hovered, and I would desperately try to find some peace and balance. But I couldn't hold on to the tranquility for long. Another shamanic practitioner would join me, and the moment would be lost. One night, as I was walking by myself along a dirt path through the woods, I hit my breaking point. I felt completely alone without the animal friends that I was used to seeking comfort from. I'd heard that there were bears, and so far gone was I in that moment, I would have gladly welcomed a bear. I felt anguish rise up in me, a pain so deep that it felt like my heart was breaking. I was alone, and there was no one that I trusted to comfort me. I stopped walking and just stood in the middle of the path. I felt my heart crack open, and a silent anguish cry went out into the darkness of the heavily wooded forest. A cry of yearning for a cat to comfort me. I felt despair that in the middle of nowhere there would be no one to answer my call. And then, like something from a fairy tale, out of the darkness, out of the woods, a cat came running and he was headed straight to me. I fell to my knees in the dirt. I opened my arms and my heart wide to receive him. He ran into my arms, and as I fiercely hugged him, I cried tears of gratitude, awe, and joy into his fur. And he poured comfort into my broken heart and covered me with his scent and strength. And like that, my balance was restored, and I was made whole again. Over and over, I told this mystery cat how grateful I was for his gift. And I told him which cabin I was staying in, should he wish to visit. I don't know how long we spent together, but when we parted, I was more myself again. The next morning, I went to the people running the retreat center and asked them if they happened to know of a cat who lived in the woods, and I described him. They looked at me as if I had two heads, and I began to think that perhaps in my shamanic moment of disintegration, I had imagined our encounter. And then the man said, "That's Charlie, the camp cat, but he doesn't hang out with the visitors. He's pretty aloof." And then I looked at them in disbelief. Aloof? The cat who allowed himself to be hugged in my heart and showered me with purrs and rubs? Later that day, Charlie stopped by the cabin. He did not come in. He didn't want to hang out with the roommates either. He just came by to check on me and make sure that I was okay. From that point on, the wildlife in the area made themselves known to me too. Quail began to hang around the cabin, and the sound of their softly murmured conversations were soothing. An elusive bobcat allowed me to see him as he darted through the brush. A herd of deer passed through the meadow in front of me, and every night after my roommates were asleep, a white cricket would creep out onto the hearth and join me in gazing into the dancing flames of the fire. The cricket kept vigil with me, and I realized, thanks to Charlie and our incredible moment in the woods, that I am never alone. The animals are always with me, and they will always answer my call from the heart, just as I will always answer theirs. This story is called Lady Jane. As a child, I always remember us having dogs. The dog I recall most vividly was Lady Jane. She was a part of my life for as far back as I could remember. She was a dog of very uncertain parentage. My mother always said she was a Heinz 57, but she definitely had some spaniel in her. Her tail swept out in a plume of fur, and she had liquid brown eyes. Our mother would tell us that before Lady Jane came to live with us, she was feral, roaming the marshes around where we lived and hunting the many rabbits that called our neighborhood home. She was very shy. No one could get near her. My mother resolved to try to rescue her, and over time, with the help of tasty food and treats, Lady Jane began to come closer to her. At that place in between being feral and becoming our family dog was a time when she did not want to let our mother out of her sight. Mom told us that she would get in the car to go on an errand, and Lady Jane would follow the car, running as fast as she could to keep up. Mom said that she would have to return to the house with her errand undone because Lady Jane simply would not give up. She seemed to be willing to follow Mom forever, wherever she went. Eventually, Mom was able to coax Lady Jane into the house, and she became domesticated on the surface. But Lady Jane's heart was still wild and only belonged to our mother. She tolerated everyone else, but she loved Mom. I grew up in an unusual household. In most families, it's the kids who plead for a puppy or kitten and vehemently promise to take care of him, her, if only they can have one. I don't recall ever pleading to adopt an animal as a child. Instead, it was my mother who had to work on our father. The poor man was allergic to animals and had to go for weekly shots in order to survive. Once the animal in question became part of our household, Mom rarely paid attention to them or cared for them. It was all left up to my sisters and I. As you can imagine, over the years, that caused some resentment as we scrubbed the chicken coop, cleaned the aviary and litter box, walked the dogs, and fed and watered everyone. None of the animals were ours. They were all with us because of Mom. A number of them did gravitate to us, and we did love them, but Lady Jane only ever truly loved Mom, even though we were the ones who took care of her. Our parents divorced, and we moved to another house. A lot of things changed. Mom took a job an hour and a half away from home, and as the eldest, a lot more of the care of the household fell on my shoulders and that of my sisters. Then Mom began staying in the city and only coming home on weekends. We had a housekeeper during the day who took care of us, but at night I was in charge. I was 15. During this time, Lady Jane had made her den under our mother's bed. That was where she stayed, and each day became a struggle to get her to come out to eat and go outside. We would have to reach under and grab her collar, and often she would snap at us when we tugged. She also smelled awful. One morning, as one of my sisters narrowly avoided getting bitten in her efforts to get Lady Jane out from under the bed, I had had enough. I called my mother and told her that Lady Jane was suffering and that she needed to be put to sleep. I had never told my mother that she must do something in my entire life, since she had some anger issues, but I realized that we could no longer deal with whatever was going on with Lady Jane. Someone had to be the adult, and if my mother was not going to be the one, then I had to do it. My mother got upset, and I had to argue with her. She finally angrily said, "Well, if you're going to do it, just don't tell me about it." And in that moment, I truly realized that I was on my own. Lady Jane had just become my complete responsibility. I was 16 years old. I made the appointment, and our housekeeper drove Lady Jane and I to the vet. It was just the two of us in the exam room they escorted us to. The assistant told me to go to the front desk, and while I was standing there, they came out and presented me with Lady Jane's collar. The instant it touched my hand, I knew she was gone, and I broke down in tears. I just couldn't help it. I think the thing that bothered me the most was that she died alone, without the one person that she loved more than anyone else in the whole wide world, my mother. It took me years to understand the complex and very messed up person that was my mother, and what she must have experienced as a child to make her who she was as an adult, and even more years to forgive her. But forgiveness was never an issue for Lady Jane. She loved Mom unconditionally and faithfully. Of us all, only Lady Jane realized that the healing energy that Mom needed most was love. And Lady Jane offered all that she had to give. So, those are the stories for today, for you and your animal companions. I hope that you've enjoyed them. For me, they celebrate the wise teachers and healers that share our lives.